My name is Dan. This is my wife, Carol. These are our kids, Wes and Jess and Ben. Well, I grew up at Grace, and then when Carol and I started dating in college, that's when she started coming, and it's just been our church home ever since. Started normal, other than the fact it was very warm when we left for church. The weather was changing.
Like this.
Yeah, it was like this. And headed to church without a thought of anything other than coming home from church. And then while at church, of course, we all went to the basement, covered for shelter. And while there, didn't really feel in danger at all. We prayed with friends and enjoyed the fellowship. And I actually said sometimes when we cancel services, it's a good thing because we interact differently. So when we started coming out of the basement, we started receiving text messages. Both Carol and I had forgotten our phone that day, so we didn't have ours, but the kids were getting all kinds of just hard to imagine text messages. The whole street's gone. So much of the town is wiped out. Your house is the last one standing. Just unbelievable things. So we worked our way back to Washington, stopped and grabbed some supplies in an extra van. And by the time we got here, we had to park about 1.5 miles from our home and then walked in our church clothes. And we saw things that you only see on CNN. And we were, as a family, we were trying to stay together. The kids wanted to keep the pace moving, and Carol and I were wanting to care for my mom as well, and just, we didn't know what we were heading into. And so ultimately walked up our street, just seeing wandering people on piles of rubble, and friends pulling up on ATVs with great hugs and "oh, you're okay," and friends who were nominal friends became very dear friends that day. And then when we arrived at our house, my whole staff, not my whole staff, but a lot of my staff and friends and Josh and Amy were already here, and just gently hugged and guided us into the house. And they really hadn't been in the house yet, our friends. They said, let's look together. And just a remarkable day of as much distress that you could think of with your stuff, and as much love as you could imagine from people around us. Well, our physical provisions have just been met constantly through places to stay. We stayed with my folks a few days. We stayed with Josh and Amy over a week. We stayed at the Embassy Suites for a while and ultimately landed in Washington in a duplex. So our provisions have been provided the whole way. And just not being here and suffering the trauma of the moment feels like a blessing to us. Even last night we were running into new people we didn't know from Washington who had been through the storm, and just hearing the trauma of the event. We're glad we missed that. So there was a protection. You know, the hallmark story that was told early on was everyone was saved because they were all in church. And that was just bad information. Maybe 15 to 20% of the people we do life with in Washington were in church. It was not why people were saved and protected. God was merciful that day. And we continue to hear remarkable stories of a friend of mine was in a pickup truck that started sliding sideways, and he reached down to put it in four-wheel drive. And while he was down, a board came in the back of his pickup and took out the window and would have ended his life. Instead, he had 6 stitches on the back of his head. But just miracle after miracle of how people were protected.
At least what I've learned from God this last year is this world is not my home, and this home was not my home. It was a super comfortable home. No matter what happened at school or in life, I could come home and sit in front of the fireplace and warm myself in front of the comfy fireplace and just be very, very comfortable in everything about this home. And then when it was taken away, I was like, oh my gosh, like that's my home. What do I do now? But just this whole year I've learned that this world is not my home. God has a much, 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 much better place for me that will not ever be damaged by storms or moth or rust. But just this was a house, a temporary living space for us while we're on earth, and now we have a new temporary living space, and not to let me become attached to this, but just to realize that we're on this earth for a better reason than to just be comforted by a house. But God has a plan for us. So it's good.
This has been the lowest year of our lives, and God has ministered to us through people and phone calls and gifts and time spent and service alongside of us, and just good questions, and we've felt very, very ministered to by the church, by just many different places. We're weeks away. We think we'll get to move in maybe around the week of November 10. We got to build this house the first time, and it was with such anticipation and joy and just creativity and energy, and we did a lot of the work ourselves, and that was a fun journey. This time it has just felt like a chore. Just, okay, got to pick stuff out, got to do this, and it just hasn't. We hear people say, oh, you get a new house, and it's like, oh, we didn't want a new house. And so it's as it comes together now, and the carpet will be here soon, and the colors and the cabinets, suddenly it's like, oh, this is beautiful. And so we're very thankful and excited. But the misnomer that, oh, well, at least you get a new house, that's not a point of comfort for us. The Lord is good. He's filled our joy. He's protected us and leading us. That's where our comfort is, not in, well, at least you get a new house. Returning to all these homes is not going to be the thing that heals this town. We just constantly hear this, well, when you get back in your house, and the neighbors, I'm going to get back in my house on this day, and it's clear to us that'll be a step in the process, but that's not a moment of a switch flips and there's healing. There's still a lot going on in this town. Driving by a mess every day for a year. The winter was hard. The rebuild has been a challenge. The builders have been wonderful, but overwhelmed, I think. And so relational problems, tempers, depression, just you name it, it's happening in the town. And so our prayer is that we would just receive God's glory and spirit in us, and then would live it out and would be of some good in our community. Our physical needs are being met. We don't want this event to define us. Maybe to mark us would be good and change us for the better. But we don't want to be those people 10 years from now. Oh yeah, those people went through the tornado. That's not interesting to us. We want to move on and let God use this to increase our compassion, our kindnesses, our generosity. Jess said it well, this world is not our home, and yet we're here for a while, and we're supposed to put down roots and love people on Christ's behalf. So just maybe that we wouldn't get lost in materialism, either again, if we really were, or at all, and that we would be just people who think long-term and eternally with everything we do, all our decisions, the places we go. We love this town. We love the people of this town. Yeah. Pray that we wouldn't mess up what God's doing.
The next Sunday, right when I walked in, people came up to me and they were like, "How are you? We heard what happened." And they were like, "Can we help you?" And I was like, "Okay." So yes, something bad happened, and I was just overwhelmed with how kind people were and how willing they were to serve, and just if you need anything, my family can help you, or just anything like that. And I was like, well, thank you. And it was people that I wasn't even that close to, and they were just reaching out and being willing to serve in any ways, and they were just really faithful through the whole last year. And it's just been awesome to see the love of people and the love of the people at our church and in our youth group. And I just hope that sometime I can show that back to them if something happens to them.
I've really enjoyed how close our family's gotten, both physically and and spiritually, just because of we've been living in a duplex, maybe meant for a couple or 3 people, but it's been the 5 of us. So I got to bunk with Ben, and and all 5 of us are close all the time and interacting in a small living space, which at first tests your patience, but then grows your love for each other, because it's just, I mean, I think our family is the best thing that we got. So I just, it was a really blessing to be close and have an excuse to like put off other life for a while post tornado and just kind of focus on that stuff. And then the other thing was the silliness of the world kind of stops after a tornado or after a big event like this. Like the social awkwardness, you just you leave that at the door, and people help each other, like Ben was saying. And it's just, it's how life should be right after a tornado, is people loving each other, people being patient with each other, people being real with each other. There was no hiding that this was a hard thing for people, so they were open and willing to share. And so I mean, through the suffering, it's just been great after that.